in the economy of time, I'm just going to share my screen so we can get right into it. And I do have an aspect of it where I'm going to need some feedback from you. We'll do that early so that my presentation doesn't crowd out or deprive you of an opportunity to share your thoughts. I'm just essentially going to ask 2 questions for your feedback. So let me now share my screen. And I need to say thanks so much to Elder Dan, who helped me with some figures that I'm going to be sharing. And thank you so much for doing this, Dan. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great. So what I'm going to share now are essentially some figures that Dan gleaned from the Statistical Institute concerning the age group cohorts in Jamaica and the population size. So for those in the post-war age group category, those with those 75 and over, there are about approximately, this is the 2018 statistics, and the figures are not absolute. They're rough, so they would need to be massaged, but this gives an indication. There are about 105,000 persons in Jamaica in 2018 in the post-war from 75 and over. The boomers, which is probably where, well, those 55 to 74, they're a little bit shy of 400,000 persons. Those in the 38 to 53 age group category, almost 500,000 Jamaicans. The Generation Y, the millennials, those in the 22 to 37, who really are the special focus of our attention. More than 500,600,000 of them. And then the Generation Z, these are the 6 to 21-year-olds, which is quite a broad category as well. Just a little bit over 700,000 persons. So you see the millennials, the Yers, they are a significant number. They form a significant number. And as I said before, many of these persons in the Generation Y age group cohort would essentially be, a lot of them would be the children of the baby boomers. Just to recap, why are we focusing on the millennials? One, the church needs them. To put it bluntly, we need them. If the church is going to survive, if the church is going to be populated, we need to focus on these millennials. But for some reason, we are not attracting them. In fact, we are driving them away. Not deliberately, of course, but they are not staying. They are not coming, and those who we have are leaving. Up to 6 out of 10 millennials are dropping out of church. And this is important. They are not simply the church of tomorrow. They're also the now church. They are both the young adults and the emerging adults. So that is significant. So we need to get on to them now, because if not, you can just see the challenge. We're going to have, essentially, in some churches it's experienced now, we're going to have churches with older persons and churches with young children. But that important bridge age group cohort, for some reason, if we don't attract them, it doesn't augur well for our churches. Notice I'm not saying Christianity, I'm saying for our churches. And certainly the millennials are poised to become the most educated of all the generational groupings. That is because their parents have seen education as a critical part of their development, of their prospects, and they have done all that they could and can to ensure that their children have even a better education than they did. And they are a significant cohort. It's still only 13% of millennials consider any type of spirituality to be important. So God doesn't play a very big role. And for many, education is a new religion. So the question now is, will they ever come together? Okay, they're leaving the church. However, hope is there. It's not all lost. That it's not Jesus they're rejecting. It's how we portray church that they're rejecting. We are going by what they're saying is that you in the church were formed by your elders into what you are now. But you have not taken into account who we are. You have not taken into account those of us to whom you are ministering. So you're basically doing what you have always done without adapting what you have always done to a new generation. So in a very real sense, it's not a matter of relevance. So most churches, we're neither capturing nor retaining the millennial, because the contention they have is that our sermons are superficial. They don't go deep, or certainly not deep enough. And our Bible studies, they say, are shallow. Many a times they say it's just repeating things that they already know without going any further. So they're not saying that we are rejecting the stories. And let's say, for example, the story of the Good Samaritan. You can't be saying what we already know. You need to dig deeper than that. What are the applications for us today? Millennials want a rich worship service that is contemplative and theologically rich. They want to know deep doctrinal truths. And whether or not they agree with it, that's not so important initially. Because what really is important is to arrest their attention, to arrest their interest, and to explore it in a really meaningful way. And they view churches that they regard as shallow. Shallow meaning that the sermons are not rich, the ministry is not rich, the studies are not engaging and penetrating and incisive. They view them as being inauthentic and insubstantial. So why are these millennials leaving the church? They don't feel respected. I go through this because we did it last week. They don't feel accepted because they see where the church rejects many because of their lifestyle, not recognizing that while you do not condone the lifestyle, it doesn't mean you are rejecting the person. So they're seeing a clear distinction between the person as a person created in God's image, practicing a sinful lifestyle. But their argument is, but aren't these the persons who you need to be attracting? They don't feel understood. They don't feel as if the church wants to hear what they're saying. They want to go deep in their spirituality. They're thinking. They want direction. They want thoughtful, penetrative, incisive responses to their questions. They want honesty. And many don't feel the church and their traditions are relevant to their lives. In many instances, they say what the church practices may be relevant for the church, but it's not relevant to them. And this is important. They see the church as unfriendly to doubters and people with mental or emotional issues. So, okay, fine. I'm challenging some of your thoughts. I'm challenging some of your principles. I'm challenging some of your practices. But don't hate me for that. I simply want to know, why do you do this? Why are you doing this? Is this making any sense? And they see a kind of arrogance in the church where they see that the church is smug about their own perspectives, and so smug that they see the perspectives and the vision of the non-church millennials as being ignored. And so their questions are not considered in a serious way. Their doubts are not reflected on serious. And so they just see the church as just being basically arrogant without being compassionate. And they see the church as overprotective of its own belief systems and so on, and legalistic. A lot of do's and don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And they're asking the question, why? And that is important because they want a reasoned, rational response. And many see the churches as boring or shallow, just not penetrative, just going over. Did you go to church today? Yeah. What did they do? Same thing they did last week. So not going is the same as going. It doesn't really matter because by not going, you still know what they did, kind of thing. So here are some points to ponder. It's a Bible study, so I have a passage. Okay, so the millennials are the least religious generation. They're leaving church in record numbers. They are highly skeptical of organized religion. Organized, and this is, you're seeing this in a lot of places now. Many churches are springing up all over. Are you a part of a denominational group? No. So what do you believe in? Oh, we believe in the Bible and we preach Jesus and so on. So why are you not a part of a denominational group? Well, we don't see that as being important. What is important is preaching Jesus, ministering to people, witnessing to the salvation of people, and nurturing the saints in the deep things of the scriptures. And so it is not only the older persons who are seeking, or the non-church people who are saying, hey, we don't find it relevant, but many persons, and when you go to some of these churches, you'll be surprised at the number of younger people who are there. Maybe it's a form of worship, maybe it's the music, maybe it's a freedom, whatever it may be. But the fact is that many denominations are losing. I've seen a lot of their younger people leaving for other groups. So there's a thirst and a hunger to find meaning in life. And it's not Jesus that they're rejecting. It's just that the church aren't making themselves relevant to the millennial culture. Because every generation, every cohort has its culture. And we need to put ourselves in a position where we deliberately seek to understand the millennial culture if we are going to be effective in our ministry and our witness. Here's a challenge for which I need your help. I'm looking at St. John chapter 10 from verse 7 and verse 9. Verse 7. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. Verse 9. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. 2 verses. And notice what Jesus says about himself. I am the gate for the sheep. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. Now, the salvation, when it says here, when it meant the reference to saved here, it speaks of deliverance from danger, protection from the ravenous wolves outside and from the false shepherd within. Go in and out is a phrase frequently used to denote the free use of an abode by one who is at home in the house. So it's pretty much like your children. They come in and they go out and they feel safe. in their going in and coming out because they are at home. No one can enter the fold and become a shepherd of the flock who does not seek to do so through the character and life and death of Jesus Christ. That is to devote himself. I'm in a brethren church community, so to devote himself in entire self-sacrifice to the sheep whom he seeks to lead. So being the gate is devoting oneself in a self-sacrificial way for the welfare of the sheep. So here's my question, and I need help with this. Is there a difference between being a gate and a gatekeeper? Is there a difference between being a gate and a gatekeeper? What is the difference? And what is the role that the church is playing? Is it playing the role of a gate or a gatekeeper? All I'm seeking is your responses. Please, I would love to get your reaction to the first and second question. The third will take care of itself. So is there a difference between being a gate and a gatekeeper? And if there is, what's the difference? I'd love to get your perspective. Anyone? Everyone?
There's Mackie has his hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, all right. Am I being heard clearly?
Yes.
I'm hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. So
it might help us and offer us some guidance in the conversation we're having. Can you hear it? Okay, I didn't just do that because I thought you were bored. What do you think of that in relation to what we're talking about? The gate and the gatekeeper. In this case, the key man, the gate man. Jesus says, I am the gate. Is there a difference between being the gate and the gatekeeper stroke gate man? Looking at that, when you watch that video, did you see a person who was being the gate or a person who was the gatekeeper? Which was he?
Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Also the gate. You said, come through there unless he let you through. He was also the gate. You couldn't come through there unless he let you through.
Okay, so he was playing a dual role, being both the gate and the gatekeeper. But in light of what Jesus says about who he was, he is the gate. Was this man being the gate as Jesus spoke about himself, or was he being a gatekeeper?
He was a gatekeeper. The man was a gatekeeper.
Yes.
You can see that he was even fired. So
Okay, you can't fire the gate.
He's not the key person. The gate is the key person. Let me say, I'm saying person because I'm referring to the church leading people to Jesus Christ. We are the gatekeepers, and the word of God, Jesus Christ, is the gate. So if we behave like this key man, watchman, we'll be driving away people from Jesus. But if we realize that we are just ordinary gatekeeper, we are just drawing people to Christ, we would not be like him to say that we are all in all and not looking at Jesus that we are serving.
Thank you, Stabawaji. Anyone else?
Yes, Brother Courtney, my mind went to the whole issue of the ID. And what is it that, how do we identify, or how does the Lord identify us? How are we chosen? So the ID represents those who are chosen, those who are the sheep, those who are identified with the gatekeeper. So if you don't have your ID, if you're not chosen, if you're not a Christian, if you're not a believer, then you won't be able to enter through the gate. That's just my thoughts.
Okay.
I fully agree with that thought.
Yes, I fully agree with that thought as well.
So that man was a gatekeeper, ensuring that only people who had the right visa, ID, could come in. If you don't in there, and we're not talking about the physical church building now, so we be careful about this analogy. We're talking about our role in the church as gate or gatekeepers, and we are gatekeepers.
Mhm. The gentleman in the skit, in the poem, he knew who the people were. Why didn't he allow them to come in? He knew they were. Why didn't he allow them?
They didn't have their IDs.
There's a
And you-
sign and a set of rules. There's criteria. Without the shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sins. Period.
Oh yeah, but that's judgment.
He's legalistic.
Judgment.
He's legalistic.
Yeah, what I'm asking is, if the purpose of the ID is to identify who you are, and the person who interviewed him, who hired him, who gave him the keys, and he said, I know her. She's Mrs. Lee. She interviewed me. She hired me. She gave me the keys, but she did not have her ID. What was the purpose? What's the purpose of the ID?
Passage.
Identify people.
Exactly, but he identified her.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. He's being legalistic. He's being stupid.
There, is that a fair comment? Is that a fair comment from
Good
Pastor
point.
Pearson?
Good point.
So in this scenario, the challenge I believe that faces us is that we have to look at who are we in relation to what Jesus says, I am the gate. Are we then, as believers, are we called to be gates? Or the gatekeeper who says, let me see your ID, let me see your badge, you don't have a badge, you can't come in. I'm talking now about the church itself. Not talking about going to heaven and so on, because that's God's prerogative in Jesus Christ. When I am not called to judge people and certify them as forever, but in the church, just think about it. Think about it. Because,
So
go ahead, Brother Sam.
sorry about that. No, sorry about that. So we are by no means called to restrict people from coming to know Christ or wanting to know Christ. Let me look at it from that perspective. We are not called to be like this gatekeeper who, if a person does not know Christ, obviously they wouldn't have, what would you say now? They would not be bearing an ID to say that, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian, whatever it is to come in church. So how then do we get that person into fellowship with Christ, fellowshipping with us? How do we bring those persons in? So by no means are we called to restrict persons. We are not called to be a gatekeeper like that in that sense. I believe we're more so called to be gatekeepers in the sense that we are aiding people in through the gate, because Christ is the gate. We're trying to be Christ-like, yes, but Christ is the gate. So I'm thinking of it from that perspective in terms of us facilitating rather than restricting.
Thank you.
I think I I support that. I think it seems like what I said earlier. We are not supposed to act like that man as a gatekeeper, looking at whether you are fit to come to Jesus or you are not fit to come to Jesus. It's the same thing that you mentioned about the millennial, looking at them, the profile of them, and say, oh, this person should not come to our church. So we have to look into that.
Thank you.
And you would have gone through what some of the reasons why millennials actually are not so much coming to the church in that instance is because they do see the church being very legalistic. They do see it as being very traditionalist and all sorts of stuff. So being this person does not, in terms of the strict gatekeeper, does not aid in that image, and you're doing more harm and being more of a deterrent to that population that you are quote unquote targeting, or should be targeting, with the hope that you brandish, I don't know, some sort of good image of a good gatekeeper as in the imagery. Whereas all they're seeing is just someone who is just hindering them and just something very unattractive, I should say, for them wanting to come to Christ or wanting to come to the church. So yeah.
And can I share another perspective, please? The gatekeeper for the shepherd and the sheepfold actually keeps the scavengers and the danger, the things that would endanger the flock inside out. So a gatekeeper also has that role of protecting. So in another sense, in the church today, we who are in the local church today have a responsibility to look out for example, false doctrine, looking out for predators, physical predators, and so on. So we have a role to protect each other, not just the overseers, not just the elders. Each of us have that role of protection. Do we consider that? Let us consider that perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. I bring this up. The last question is really just for us to stimulate some thoughts, refine our thinking, search the scriptures, view our roles, see what it is that we are called to be, who we are called to be. And what is critical is that we must never play the role of being barriers to the sheep and become a barrier for the sheep. Jesus says, hey, I have other sheep who are not as yet in the fold. We have to be careful that we take our roles seriously, but we play our roles correctly as God has intended for us to do, and not go overboard or be sluggish and lethargic in displaying and fulfilling our roles. But we must know what our role is as far as the church is concerned.
Amen.
I'm just going to end very quickly with this because time is gone. What are the things that matters most? And I think I distill them down to three things. What matters most to millennials? One, they want rich content. A worship service that is contemplative and theologically rich. And I don't think it's just millennials want that. They don't need flashy and bells and whistles kind of worship experience. They want songs that reflect deep biblical and theological truths. That is very important. They are because even in the church, one of the criticism is that of the contemporary church is that we are singing songs that sound good, but they are not biblically or theologically accurate, and we have to be careful. They want theologically rich music. One person said to me that she's tired of these songs that come in like Jesus is my boyfriend love song. And what we need are songs that hold in proper perspective who Jesus is, who God is, and offer worship truly in the spirit. And they want churches to clearly communicate the theological truth, using whatever audio visuals or whatever is available. Millennials want to answer the question, where am I? What's expected of me? How do I live in this time? How do I live in this time where climate change is an issue? How do I live where the environmental issues are of great concern? How then should we live? And if the church is not responding to that, then the content is not rich. They want integrity and honesty. Authenticity will bring them to church. If the church isn't giving you the whole story, if it's sugar-coated and they're trying to put on an act on stage, people in their 20s and 30s will see through this and they will leave. They can sense when leaders and congregants are just going through the motion. We just go, there's nothing exciting, there's enriching, there's nothing motivating, and we just go through the motion. Because why? Because this is what we always do. This is what we have always done, and we are not going to change because this is who we are. And finally, I won't go anymore. They want good quality worship service. I found that interesting. Good quality worship service. What does that mean? A church service that shows that the leaders put time and effort into making the service run smoothly, connectedly, so that the songs are connected to the passages are connected to the sermon, and the sermons are connected to the prayers. And what they want is to show that thought, fear, prayer went into it. Instead of saying, oh, we can sing this, oh, that's a good passage. Yeah, we can do this. No, what they're saying is that we want to see that time and effort and prayer went into planning. They are not looking for a show. It's interesting. It's not about showmanship. It's not about performance they want. They're looking for dedication, proper planning, and it shows excellence in worship. These people have put it together, and it's a beautiful experience. The Lord speaks through excellence. So it's not the least I can do. Because if it's the least I do that is acceptable to God, then God will always get the least. Quality is a reflection of authenticity. Essentially, they just want to have a relationship with a Jesus they understand. And they want to see how, in the culture in which I live, in the times in which I live, how can I see Jesus? How can I portray Jesus? How can I live for Jesus in this present time with all the challenges around? How can I live for Jesus? How does Jesus want me to live? How then should we live? Borrowing from Francis Schaeffer. In this day and age, how should we live? Just as older generations have seen him through the lens of their culture, millennials must see through the culture, the community, the church, the family. They must see a God who never ignores them. How can I show them this Jesus through my worship experience, through my culture, through my community, through my family? How can we as a church portray Jesus as he is to a generation that wants to see him? That's the challenge for us. And until we get that right, we're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities to reach these millennials. So I'm going to stop here because, my time is gone. And I don't know if anyone has any other question they would like to raise. So I'm going to stop there at this point.
It seems like the millennials are not prepared to wait on us.